Soul Hackers was a cyberpunk adventure where a hacker group fight big business Algensoft, a not so subtle hint at the heavy Native American mythology used, or perhaps misused, to tell a story of an evil organization called the Phantom Society and their plot to do bad. The game expanded the Devil Summoner lore by giving us a clearer look at other Devil Summoners, clearing up what a Dark Summoner is, adding more mythology to the Kuzunoha mythos, and to Yatagrasu to some extent. But we aren't talking about Soul Hackers. We are talking about Soul Hackers 2. Soul Hackers 2 is about two artificial super beings called Ringo and Fig, who are made to stop a predicted world-ending event. Ringo quickly takes a leadership role and Fig is support. For comic fans, this means Ringo is Batman and Fig is like Oracle or Alfred. For MCU fans, this would mean that Ringo is Iron Man and Fig is like Jarvis. For Persona fans, it means Ringo is Joker, Yuna Ukami, and P3 protagonist, while Fig is Morgana, Teddy, and Fuka. So anyway, Ringo soul hacks. Yes, they made soul hack a term used to refer to bringing back the dead to life, more or less. You revive three characters. Melody, she's a hooker with a heart of gold. No, I'm just kidding. She's a stone-faced logical thinker. Then you have Saizo. He's the hooker with the heart of gold. He's what would have been called a Dark Summoner in previous Devil Summoner games. More on that later. He's a merc for hire with some principles and shark teeth. Then there's Arrow. Arrow is like mayo in my burger. Offensive, unwarranted, and unwanted. He's supposed to be the moral compass, kinda, but it doesn't work well since we already have logic with Melody and emotional maturity with Saizo. I guess Arrow is supposed to represent heroic thought, because to be honest, he seems like he was originally the protagonist and got sidelined during development. And just so we're clear, I do hate Arrow. Soul hacking has an effect on Ringo, causing instabilities. This is remedied in-game by the Vision Quests. In this, we learn more about Arrow, Saizo, and Melody. The Vision Quests are dungeons of very similar design that feature their own subquests. Beating them serves a gameplay function list of having other stuff to do and providing new skills that vastly improve their proficiency in battle. And then the rest of the game is just doing specific dungeons to further the plot till you get to the end of the game. This game was revealed with a teaser. According to Ishida, they decided to make a sequel to Soul Hackers despite the original coming out 25 years ago and the 3DS re-release being 10 years old. He watched fans talk excitedly about Soul Hackers, and it comforted him because he was worried Soul Hackers was forgotten. It was a large project with Matsuri Hirata and Eiji Ishida working on it together. A return in some ways, as they previously worked together on Tokyo Mirage Sessions. This was a large project from its scale, and this required the collaboration for these directors. Ishida took charge of the worldview, and Hirata was in charge of the game's mechanics. The world is meant to be a continuation of the original Soul Hackers, with how technology is a major element of the story. Hirata says originally, Soul Hackers dealt with a theme that was common in science fiction works from that generation. Technology is useful, but if you make a wrong move, it can become a threat to mankind. We've taken a different approach, says Ishida. Ishida also says, some important parts of the game are based on the previous one, while some elements are inversions of the previous one's structure. One of these is the main character. In the previous game, the humans were the solvers, with technology needing to be solved. This time, Ringo, one of the Aeons created by technology, is the protagonist. Ringo is in a position to solve human problems, while keeping the same setting. The two sides of the story are reversed, creating a new structure that is unique to this game. Ishida considered that nowadays technology is normal and essential for everyday life, so portraying it as a threat was inappropriate. Ishida instead tried to work with the idea of the evolution of technology, and this brought about the idea of what if the protagonist was a non-human, an intelligent life form of technology. Soul Hackers 2 also took inspiration from Nier Automata, whose protagonist is also a female non-human in a future society on the verge of decline. They studied how stylish the protagonist looks and how the camera tracks them from a third-person perspective. They also cite John Wick's Continental Hotel as inspiration for the realms in Soul Hackers 2, despite the fact that Dark Realms already existed in Devil Summoner lore. Because there's a lot of media that revolves around whether an artificial intelligence has a soul, we decided to avoid that aspect of the story. Ringo and Fig are both these non-human intelligent life, but they have different personalities. Fig is overly empathetic and Ringo is philosophical. They also wanted to focus on the beliefs and backgrounds of the characters while touching on the opposition between the Yatagrasu and Phantom Society. These beliefs were things like, why did they become devil summoners? What makes them fight? And this focus on the life and drama of summoners is why Ishida believes this elevated Soul Hackers 2 to being more than a sequel, but also made it a completely new work. To explore the different mindsets, they created Arrow from Yatagarasu, Melody for the Phantom Society, and Saizo as a, and I quote, free agent. In previous games, his position would be considered a Dark Summoner. In talking of the things that are inversions, this game has a very vocal protag. This was changed so the main player can get into the story without characters around them explaining the world or the progressions of the story. They also made the protagonist female specifically to go against the typical tradition of male-led Atlas titles. Ringo and the other cast members were designed by Shiro Miwa. He was chosen mostly due to his fan art for Megaten, Soul Hackers in particular. Ringo and Fig were designed to look almost alien, like they're from another world, and to integrate technology into their looks, such as the glowing panels and their hair. Miwa was just given these sorts of parameters and did not know the specifics or the setting of the world. Miwa also asked them if they wanted him to design the art to resemble the previous titles, but Ishida and Harada said they didn't want that. Ishida said doing this would be emulating someone else's ideas, and it would make Soul Hackers 2 miss out on two important things: originality and soul. Another deviation is in the music, made by Monica. This was also a conscious decision, where they wanted the music to create the realistic worldview, female protagonists, and sci-fi elements. Monica was told the theme of the game, scenarios from the storyline, and the characters so they can get an idea of the intended atmosphere. Because Soul Hackers is meant to be built as a new pillar alongside Persona and SMT, they thought looking outside of the company added an essence that they couldn't access normally. If you're wondering who this game is even for, Harada says that this was made with the idea of creating content that would appeal to everyone who supports Atlas, as well as enthusiastic fans who have been waiting for a sequel. The gameplay is interesting. Harada says they made a lot of improvements. This game introduces the Sabbath. It's a press turn derivative where hitting the weak point builds up damage for what is ultimately more like an all-out attack from Persona 3, 4, and 5, or a co-op from Strange Journey. The design of the gameplay was with the intention to be easy for new players to get into. The comp functions has changed as a way to equip a demon and also functions as a weapon itself. The battle system was designed with Ringo as a core and with the party equipping demons, which alters their stats and what skills they can use. In an interview with 4Gamer, Harada and Ishida state Persona is the series with a character focus, or at least more of a character focus than SMT. When planning, they considered the characters. In Soul Hackers, Ishida felt that many interesting characters were not really explored, but each of them clearly had some kind of background. So for Soul Hackers 2, he wanted to be able to explore these sorts of characters. If you're wondering why it's simply called Soul Hackers 2 and not Devil Summoner Soul Hackers 2 or Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner Soul Hackers 2, here's what Harada says. There are lots of reasons for this, but one of them is that we wanted to put the name Soul Hackers front and center, since we're using technology as a major theme. Another reason is simply that it would be too long, hahaha. The first game was the second Devil Summoner game, and since this one is the second title, it would be difficult to understand why it would be called that way. There's a topic related to this in the anniversary book, included in the limited edition, if you're interested, so please look at that. And that's all the development history. The rest of this video will now be a review of the game. So without further ado, let's talk about the game. The character design is by Shiro Miwa, who aside from their Megaten fan art is also a working mangaka. His first solo manga was Dogs, and it's a good way of seeing some of his artistic signatures such as gloves, skilled at conveying motion, and fashion. I actually think his skill set was very underutilized. The cast for the most part feel like they have way too many accessories on. The cover art isn't even art drawn by Miwa, it's art using the game models. The Famitsu article released the day before the game was released has his actual art and it looks pretty good. The staff mentioned touching up the demons to suit the art style of Miwa, and I couldn't tell you what they did besides making it look more comic booky. I like Miwa's art very much outside of Soul Hackers 2, but it feels like he was micromanaged despite their claims that they gave him very vague direction, Or maybe because the direction is essentially amounted to don't try to make it like the previous game's art and use these handful of keywords. Maybe this resulted in this admittedly annoying situation an artist can get into where you aren't given enough direction to really get a feel for what they want. The art direction for the game is generally lacking. Dungeons have it the worst. We get some vibrant looking main areas like the Gomiden Paramacho, and they look nice. They are, however, quite limiting. The actual areas are quite small and make the world feel very small. This isn't really helped by the small amount of NPCs you can talk to. I always talk to NPCs ever since I replayed Soul Hackers for the now defunct Hello Fellow Megatinus podcast. The reason being is that games like Soul Hackers Raido 1 and 2, Shin Megami Tensei 4, Strange Journey, and Nocturne all have NPCs that really build out the world. Soul Hackers 2 NPCs are more like generic RPG NPCs, where they don't have a lot to say, most of them don't really have personality or flair to them, and sometimes they know things they really shouldn't have known. Why do random NPCs know the deep secrets that are a surprise to the main cast? I want to reserve that criticism for later on in the video, but returning to the art, the main areas look nice, but the dungeons are horrible. They are bland, they look so repetitive, and they are very boring. Stuff like the access being the worst. It also doesn't help that you spend most of your time in dungeons. I'd say the 40 hours or so it takes to beat this game on a casual run is hurt by more than half of it being in dungeons, and that's not exactly fun. This is not specific to the art, but in mentioning demons, there's like 2 demons from Devil Summoner brought into this game, excluding the Jack Frost variants. This roster of demons is rather small and disorganized. For some reason you have Sudama being a mid-tier demon, being stronger than demons like Yoshitsune, Hellbiker, and Futsunishi. In saying that, let's talk a little bit about the gameplay. It's third person and a dungeon crawler. Let's talk about the exploration. The game has you walk around as Ringo, and when in town, you're in these tight fixed corridors. Not a whole lot going on, but it feels really slow. This game has a slow feeling throughout. The battle animations feel overlong, the movement feels sluggish, the slash action feels like that too. So outside of the town, there's dungeons. The story dungeons are on the main locales list, and that grows over time. And the other half is the access, which is the inside of the minds of Arrow, Saizo, and Melody. The logic is, since Ringo so-hacked them, she suffers because she is linked to them, and that causes her problems. So they go in to the access to participate in vision quests. The Soul Hackers vision quests were the final moments of characters. They function to further the plot, enhance the intrigue, change up the playstyle, and as I said, play the final moments of a character. In Soul Hackers 2, it's a static dungeon that gives some snippets of insight to the characters, most of which we see in the first Soul Hack, and gameplay-wise, offers quests which are mostly just fetch or kill X amount of demons. There's some mini-bosses in there, which sometimes have restrictions, but they're not very difficult. Progressing unlocks highly useful skills. Some of the best skills are locked behind a very final part of the axis, but the skills will be super useful throughout the game, and by the time you're able to get them, they're not useful that much anymore. The dungeons in the Axis are bad. It takes till around the 4th floor for them to actually have more than just simple dead ends and start implementing other dungeon features such as teleports. But even with that being said, it's still a slog because it feels slow, and you don't really get any more dungeon features from that. You get a skill that speeds up movement, but it's temporary, but it became integral in my playthrough. Let's talk about the battle system. It's turn-based, and the gimmick introduced is the demon stacks and the Sabbath. You hit weaknesses, or later on you get crits, and that gains demon stack. This number is how many demons from your stock participate in what is essentially the demon co-op from Strange Journey. It's slow, and it ties into the complaint that I have about slow animations in the game, where it feels tiresome watching these things play out. One of the worst is Megadolon. It's a super slow skill, and it becomes somewhat useful later. The Sabbath are fancy all-out attacks that does some kind of damage, and it cannot miss. It's a type of damage that can't be reflected either. Later on, you can get skills to add special effects like buffs and debuffs and second hits to this Sabbath. By the way, there's no demon recruitment in battle. Instead, there's a button called Assist, which just recommends the attack to use for the party. This seems like a good idea on paper, but the game will literally tell you when something is weak to the skill, nulls it, drains it, buys it, use it, breaks it, fix it, trash it, change it, melt, upgrade it. I suppose a newbie might benefit from this at first, Buffs and debuffs are not as integral to battle. It's mostly about getting your demon stacks. There's also commander skills. These do things such as boost the amount of stacks and offer a second turn to one party member. I literally don't remember what the other ones do because I didn't really use anything besides those two skills. The party itself is 4 deep. Each character can equip a demon that changes their skills. The game suffers from a lack of customization. Each character has default affinities. Ringo is physical and elect. Melody is fire. Saizo is force and gun. Arrow is ice and heal/buffs. And it forces you to build them out this way to make every weakness exploitation and additional skill as effective to building demon stacks as possible. But also because demon stacks are the focus, you will constantly build demons to be well-rounded enough to hit basically every weakness. Because getting a demon stack is a lot more important than simply using the skill that the party member is good at. You also have items. This is reminiscent of Tokyo Mirage sessions. You receive miscellaneous demon pieces from killing them, and you can use them for comp upgrades and various items such as heals and buffs, debuffs, and elemental damage. Because of all this, you cannot really build to do what you want to do, but also there's enough safety cushion to prevent you from ever failing. By the way, I didn't mention it yet, but I never died playing this game. All 200 plus hours on easy, normal, and hard. Part of it is how slanted battles are in your favor. And also, it's the dungeon design. The dungeons can be long, but you get items and skills that let you leave safely anytime. It also autosaves, so you don't really have to risk too much. You can go back to the safe house, which is a rest area, to heal for free. There's also the meal mechanic, quirky meals made by Fig, as well as food that you can buy from around the map. You can try them. Each character has preferences, and some NPCs around town will even just tell you party members' favorite meals, which is super weird. And again, it's bad NPC design. The meal mechanic offers benefits like passive heals, Maka gain, and my favorite thing, which are the meals that increase risky enemy encounters. Meal preferences that the different characters have supposedly changes the effectiveness or duration of its effects, but I didn't really notice anything special. And most of the meals are pretty readily available, so it's not really like you're struggling to get them. When you have the meal animations, there's not really any variety, so it's not like you're seeing them eat these new things. They kind of always have this weird assortment of pizza and mayonnaise available at all times. So I mentioned risky enemies. I want to talk about the different enemy types. Risky foes are just one of the 3. Enemies show up as rare, which drop rare items that could be sold for money. I really don't understand this design. Just drop a lot of money. Why would you add an item that I would then have to sell to get the money? It's just a dumb middleman. And it's not like the items have unique or interesting flavor text. They are the only type that runs away from you, and they can escape during battle. In my experience, they are the only enemies that will opt to escape, at least. There are variations of demons in that general level range of the area that you're in. They seem to have the same affinities as the normal encounter versions of the demons, but they have skills that can cover up their weaknesses. Risky enemies are level-based enemies. They are tougher battles. They drop items that you can use to make incenses, which make your party have better base stats. These are also the best way to grind. It's the best way to get money. It's the best way to get from level 80 to 99. You just build your party to be very durable to each enemy setup until you reach the next threshold. So then you get a variation of different demons, and then you build around that. Finally, there's the red enemies. They're the ones you see everywhere. And I just wanted to put a note that the red enemies can sometimes have a symbol above their head, and that just means that they are a quest demon, and you should fight them if you want to finish quests. A huge part of the world building are the side quests. You get these from various people and places like Ginkgo, Flamma, Jack Frost's, just to name a few sources. I hate quests in this game. They are mostly just fetch and kill X amount quests. This game really wants to make fetch happen. It's not gonna happen. Only a few variations exist, and it feels very shallow, and some of the world building just doesn't happen. We are told the world is stagnating, but the town looks so nice, and everyone is usually happy. Except the NPCs that slowly change with the happenings of the game. Somehow knowing key events happened, which is very silly. There's a few quests that are reactive to the main story, and that's pretty interesting. Some things interconnect in interesting ways, such as the other elements I neglected to mention, the social component. This game has a meter for each playable that Ringo interacts with. During story beats, she chooses dialogue that falls in line with each character. There's Saizo's empathy, Arrow's stupid heroic choice, and Melody's logical choice. Another component, however, is going to the bar and grabbing some brewskis. This is cool in concept, it's very Catherine, but honestly, you unlock several after key story beats and after certain quests, so ludonarratively, you just shotgun like 9 to 10 beers with various people, all right at once, because there's no reason to leave these to wait. Some of these little vignettes also build into each other, the main plot and side quests and stuff like that, and that's kind of cool. I think it's kind of ineffectual though, because you learn a lot of superficial or superfluous info about the cast, which is only cool if you're super interested in them and want to learn more, but they didn't really grow. They quite literally end the game the same exact way they started, with the only one really changing being Saizo. Let's talk equipment. Comps in this world are kind of lame. Originally, comp tech was a thing created by Victor. They are used to summon demons, and also they are weapons. Prior to this, the only tech we knew of were the Kuda, the Kuzunoa used. Watch my Kuzunoa vids, by the way. And Onmyoji also had their own special way of summoning, and that's referenced in the Raido manga. The Gump is mysterious in Devil Summoner and Soul Hackers. It was a central plot in the TV show. Why did Kyoji's dad make them? Why do they have super strong demons in them? In Soul Hackers, they don't know who made it. It's just a weird design, and Soul Hackers expands the concept by having different types of comps, including an umbrella comp, a guitar comp, and other insane designs. Soul Hackers 2 had Saizo's Tommy Gun, Melody's Sai, which are called Stigma, Arrow's Gump, which, what? Why does he have that? He says it's standard issue in this game, which, huh? The Kuzunoa and the Yatagarasu didn't originate the design, so what the heck? Also, Ringo has the Antikythera, a reference to Aegis maybe, but it's for sure a reference to the mechanism that was discovered in the waters of Greece. When not in use, there are these squares on her thighs. These are boring and frankly basic. We are basically getting 2 guns, a sword, gun, and some Sai. And for some reason, only one character in the entire world can upgrade these. No one else? Ingenuity would have been welcome. It's part of what made the comp concept interesting. Mystiques are another piece of equipment. They also are items to increase damage of various elements, effectiveness of support and heals, costs of these skills, or they're equipable spells that you can have. You get these by learning all the skills of a demon. It'll give you one. Sometimes they'll just give you them after they've been maxed out. These are useful, especially when you get to the point where you can equip each party member with the skill that they have an affinity to, making demon choice just a matter of preference and covering the rest of the bases. Okay, let's talk about the NPCs and their functions. You have Lena, she's the person who takes demon drops and makes items into it. That's all. She doesn't really have anything else going on with her. There's the shopkeep at the De La Mancha, the superstore, that's just a reference to Don Quixote. It's the other store that's in the real world of Japan. She's kind of just a chipper employee. There's the guy who runs the accessories store, who's a disgraced fashion designer, and that was kind of interesting. His story plays out in side quests and intermingles with some of the NPCs who had side quests too. There's the bar, it's just a booze pit. It's cool, there's not much going on there, and the barkeep doesn't really have anything going on with him. And there's 3 characters that are somewhat interesting. Tatara, or Tara, is the comp shop owner. Her dad used to run the comp shop and he passed away. Although she looks like a Ippon Datara, and her name is a reference to that, and her design is a reference to that, it seems that she's just a human. She even loses her eye while being the comp shop owner. It's not her wearing that for any other reason. Though there is a female presenting Ippon Datara in the Devil Summoner games, for some reason it just seems like this might just be a jaunty little reference to that rather than actually being any kind of lore. The one who worked with Victor would have made sense to have some relation to Tara, since Victor created the comp tech, and that Datara would then have the knowledge of it. Unfortunately, they keep her purposely vague, and it's unfortunate because now all you can do is discuss whether or not it's canon. Next is Madame Ginkgo. She just kind of exists. It's not really explained. There's not really any cool lore ties or references besides an NPC stating that she hasn't aged in 50 years and she plays a major role in the DLC. It's just a thoughtless plugging in a familiar character. I couldn't tell you I liked it outside the fact that I just like the design, and I like Ginkgo. She gives quests and that's all she does here. Victor is actually more of that. He doesn't really act like the Victor from the other games, besides having some superficially deep dialogue in some of his quests. and being a wealth of knowledge that gets underutilized for some reason. There's really no reason for his Gomeden to be a circus. It's not really explained. It's kind of dumb. Cirque du Gomeden is really just like a cheap reference to Cirque du Soleil. I guess that's what it is. There's not a whole lot of reason that the Italian Swiss man Victor Frankenstein would randomly name his Gomeden a French-Japanese name. The Marquis also makes some references, but it's pretty underwhelming in my opinion. Demonic fusion here is poorly optimized. The menu is ugly, and while they have compendium fusion, it's not obvious and not turned on automatically. The game really pushes money as a very difficult to get resource for a good chunk of the game. It chokes upgrades, accessories purchasing, and fusions, which sounds like a good balance, but it really isn't. The best way to get money is simply grinding, or specifically it's grinding risky and rare foes while having a meal that gives you a bonus, and that's an annoying thing to do for most people. Demon fusion is also pretty boring. There's no fusion accidents, the roster itself is lacking. Like most other aspects of this game, it's simplified, but in a way that actually makes it not very helpful to new players and not really exciting to old players. All of this, and I haven't really talked about the story yet. The story in Soul Hackers 2 isn't bad necessarily, it's just predictable and a bit silly. I debated addressing my thoughts on the story, but I wanted to bring up miscellaneous thoughts I had while playing first. Why are freelance summoners a new term when dark summoners are literally an established term? Not only that, but for some reason, this game seems to ignore all concept of devil summoners being a largely unknown concept for the general population, and that other factions for devil summoners exist. Instead, they kind of recreate the Hatfield and McCoy feud, or I guess the Gaian and Messian feud, by making it just the Yatagarasu and Phantom Society. They don't really make any reference to anything else. They seem to kind of own all real estate in that regard. It's almost like the two in Soul Hackers 2 aren't really the same thing. But then again, Azazel does show up as a reference, and we do know the Phantom Society wants to summon the Great One. In All About Soul Hackers, or Soul Hackers no Subete, if you're a degenerate, the Great One is based off of the One God, so basically the Judeo-Christian God. In general, looking at Phantom Society, they are kind of analogous to the West. They do things like having people of all races join or hire them temporarily. They also allow for some pretty bereft individuals to take power. Literally, Azazel is a fallen Grigori. Though in Soul Hackers 2, Azazel isn't pretending to be someone whose name, Nishi, literally means West. According to All About Soul Hackers, they are a mysterious organization that uses demonic powers to rule the world from the shadows and collect human souls. Apparently, the Great One desires human souls. It's a weird thing, and the mysteries of the organization amounts to who is the Great One. If it's God, why is he relying on evil means to do what he wants to do, and why does he want souls? In Soul Hackers, Phantom was an organization that the Kuzunoa were investigating. They contracted dark summoners, and there was this you can check in anytime you like, but you can never leave sort of deal with them. We see that reflected a bit in a subplot for Soul Hackers 2, but it's pretty poorly executed. There's also weird animations, both facial and movements of the characters that seem off. It's just not as fluid as things like Persona 5, Catherine, Nocturne, Raido, or Digital Devil Saga. It's somehow stiffer than all those things mentioned. There's a lot of banter in fights also. They talk so much to the point where some items have specific lines. It's kind of cool to say that each character has more than 300 voice lines for battles, but at the same time, it's kind of a thing where it's just too much for me. I grew to like Mimi's design, but not her function, because there was really no reason for her to exist besides to be a mascot. You are forced to use Mimi. There's no reason explained why Fig designed her to look like an owl. There's no inclination that Fig is accustomed or prefers cute things. It's really weird. It's just a thing that happens and you don't question it. No one questions it in the game. Mimi is your navigator for most of the game. She's very annoying. She's useless. You get to play as Mimi for a short time, and it's not really a welcome change, because in the short time you're using Mimi, you can't escape demons ramming into Ringo to fight, and you have to keep fighting them all, and that's really annoying. I also think that this is menu hell. It's poorly optimized and frankly overwhelming. I don't want to rant about it too much, but you have so many menus within menus. You also have the main map you can quick travel to. Sometimes I would hit the button for the main map and then I would be forced to quick travel because you can't back out of it if you accidentally hit it. I found Fig and Ringo being personalities an interesting idea, but they're quite literally the robots learning to be human trope. Aeon is poorly explained, and also too much rider's convenience in the concept of Aeon and most things in this game, such as access and even concepts like soul hacking. A lot of the time I would figure out plot elements before they even were revealed, or I spent a good chunk of the story questioning why something happened the way it did because it made no sense. A lot of the game revolves around Arrow to the point where I really think Arrow might have been the protagonist at some point. It's really weird, and it's also weird because he's super annoying. He's just the generic hero. What a boring character. They also talk about how buff Arrow is often, which is so weird considering, well, look at him. It's like how people will say an anime character is thick, but then they have like this rail thin frame. Arrow does not look muscular at all. He doesn't dress muscular or athletic. His outfit doesn't convey it, but they definitely tell you that he loves working out and he loves protein. I had a lot of trouble with affinities in this game because when equipping demons, the stuff about party members I kept forgetting, so I didn't know who was good at what. And you can't look at those affinities while you're equipping demons, so you have to back out into the summoner menu to look at what things that they're good at. Then you go back to the demon menu to equip the demons. It's really dumb. I don't really want to talk about the story because there's not really a whole lot to say without coming off even more dismissive or annoying or even any other kind of negative attribute. I found the story to be fine. It's mostly just mediocre. It doesn't excite me. I'm sure if you're not familiar with sci-fi, you might find a lot of this stuff to be interesting and new. A lot of my time playing this game, I learned that me disliking my experience was the minority opinion amongst Megaten content creators, amongst the people who are writing reviews, everything. Almost everyone I knew either loved the game or at least thought it was okay. I even saw some people say that it was the best story in SMT, you know, even though it's not an SMT game. I read a review also that said that somehow the demon recruitment was better in this game because you don't recruit demons. You just get to give them an item and instantly get them to join your party. You don't actually ever have to engage with talking to them. I didn't really think that that was a good thing, but for some reason people like it. I think the majority of people tend to go more middle road or even a little negative, especially in the last few reviews. For me, this experience I thoroughly did not enjoy. I felt annoyed, frustrated, and dumbfounded. I spent a lot of time writing down flaws and things I didn't enjoy. And I can just write off a list. Did you know if Ringo dies, she can still do Sabbaths, but for some reason she can't do commander skills? Why? Ringo is why anyone is able to do anything. So why is that function gone when she dies? Why doesn't everyone just lose ability to do things or even just die when she dies? Why did the soul hacking thing hurt her one time in the main story but literally never again? In what way are Ringo and Fig polar opposites? According to Ishida they are, but there's no representation of that. How is the world on the brink of collapse when it looks like a nice city with no futuristic or cyberpunk elements? Except 2 homeless people. Why do so many people know about Devil Summoners? Why do so many NPCs know key story beats that only people in the room should know? Why are Yatagarasu painted as simply being potentially evil or not as good as you think? Or maybe they're supposed to be morally gray. They keep trying to push this Hatfield and McCoy thing, and both agencies seem to be like mafia, and you can't leave them if you join them. It's so weird. Why are the Kuzunoas detached from the Yatagarasu, having a very small, tenuous link to them, not being integral to their function like how they were in all the other games? Why is Mangetsu a new name, but there's no explanation of anything about that or any other thing? If the world was ending, why did the Kuzunoa not get involved at all? Where is the other Kuzunoa? Why did they introduce a new Yatagarasu agent at the end of the game and he didn't matter? And he doesn't get any more screen time after that. So on and so forth. I think if you're like me and have a very specific set of reasons you love Megaten, you might not like this game, but frankly, this game should be considered decent or even great by people. Overall, if I had to choose a word to describe this game, I'd call it mediocre. But again, I think most people will enjoy it. And that's really all I have to say. I kind of feel bad because I don't want to be overly negative about something, but also I didn't really enjoy the game. My personal experience was just not that great, and I don't want to be dishonest. So before we go, I want to thank my channel members, Garidius, A Lie Remains a Lie, and my fellow Megatennis tier member, FF12 Kid. Without you guys, I wouldn't be able to stomach this. Let me know, what do you guys think about these types of reviews? Should I keep doing these opinionated things or should I stick to just the history stuff? Also, let me know what you think about Soul Hackers. Are you going to buy it? Are you not going to buy it? Whatever. Don't forget to follow me on Twitch and on Twitter or buy my merch. Anyways, goodbye, fellow Megatenists.